You're watching the Eternal Tournament Series.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Eternal Tournament Series. This is the Season 1 Invitational for 2018. I am Gabe, also known as Calimdir, and here in the booth with me for Round 2 of the Swiss is LocoPojo.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. We're pretty excited to have you here, and looks like we have a pretty good matchup. It's going to be Ikaria Blue versus Film Control today, Trumpets versus herad, and looking like a pretty interesting matchup overall. We have a pretty sizable pile of cool stuff going on. Herad's running the typical 4 of Champion of Cunning, 4 of Black Sky Harbinger with Stewards and In Cold Bloods and Hailstorms and all of that good stuff. And Ikaria Blue is looking at, the regular Rise of the Challenge die show and 4 Ikaria package. I always delight in seeing the decks with this 4 Ikarias. It's always a pretty fun time.
Yeah, I think all Ikaria decks have... There was a time when Ikaria decks ran 2 Ikarias, but since Kamado came and turned everything around, people have moved on in every Ikaria deck to running 4 Ikaria. Just Rakano Artisan hasn't really made the cut anymore. The strategy is just, more linear. Just have removal, have good cards. You don't need the synergy as much. I mean, Throne Warden is still there, still some armor stuff, but for the most part, you just want to have powerful card for card interactions there.
Yep. Yeah, it can be a pretty solid matchup. There's a ton of value-oriented play going on here. Oftentimes the Ikaria can get in for the overwhelming amount of damage, but I think it's going to be an interesting round either way. It should be a difficult setup for either player to sort of take the game. If Trumpets can make it to Ikaria, I think he's got a pretty good chance.
Yeah, I think this game's going to go long, and I personally favor Trumpets, but these In Cold Bloods from, that we're seeing everybody play could absolutely destroy Trumpets.
Oh yeah, they are actually particularly good against these Ikaria blue-based decks. If you can hold on to like a Vara's Favor or anything to pop that Aegis, you can just knock all of the Ikarias out of the deck. This deck only has like 4 win cons combined with the Starsteel die show, so if it loses all of those units, it's actually pretty hard to come back.
So big thing with this film list from the last one we saw. This one's running 4 Film Bloodcasters. He's playing 2 Lightning Strikes, which are going to be huge here, and not playing any Darakas, which I think having less of those big, just burly units is going to make the matchup a little worse against Armory here.
Yeah, it's quite possible. Daraka is a pretty good card in many of these matchups. On the other hand, herad has 2 Azindel's Gift in the main board. He's recognized that what is going on with this tournament appears to be a lot of players playing very, very greedy decks. And if you're playing very, very greedy decks, then Azindel's Gift is a very good counter to that. So if he can actually force one of those out, if he can get any sort of setup that just knocks out all of these big finishers, I think Herad's got a pretty good chance of stabilizing and taking control of the game.
Yeah, I definitely think Azindel's Gift is at one of the best times it's been since Eternal has been released, especially in this Invitational. However, most of the time people run Celestial Omen and Azindel's Gift. He's not running the Omen, so he's not really running more ways to find Gift than normal. He's just running still the same 2. It's just that he's not going to take that extra turn to cast it. So it'll be 1 turn faster potentially, but he's not going to find it any more frequently than a typical Omen Gift deck.
Yeah, a little bit less of a surprise, but just as reliable and occasionally a little bit more tempo efficient. So he can actually set up units the turn before he gifts and not have to sort of sit on the Celestial Omen about half the time.
Every gift is a surprise.
Every gift is a surprise. Yeah, it's a surprise presents. Who doesn't love presents?
Exactly.
All right, so both players are in game. Of course, we are looking at Trumpets and herad, both sitting on 2 and 3 respectively, playing out all their power. Don't have anything major to play here. Herad throws his Wisdom of the Elders immediately, and looks like we're getting started on that.
Yeah, and Trumpets would like more Justice influence, but they have all the time in the world here, as herad doesn't have anything particularly proactive to do. Just going to play out these Bloodcasters, which are not bad against Daisho, against Runehammer, against Throne Warden, things like that, but doesn't do much versus Trumpets' overall, win conditions in Ikaria and things like that, and sort of the Sky King.
Yeah.
But this In Cold Blood plus Death Strike plus Vara's Favor is going to be able to get through any Ikaria or Throne Warden that comes down.
Yeah, Herad can definitely get through the Icarias and the Throne Wardens if he needs to. The main problem he's going to have here is with this die show, which happens to be in Trumpet's early hand. That's actually pretty good for Herad, I think. The die show is probably one of the bigger threats, especially if you rise to the challenge for it. So it being in his early hand means it's a little bit more susceptible to just getting removed early on because Trumpets might be forced to play it early.
Yeah, so something interesting about Trumpet's list, a lot of one-ofs, only playing one Starsteel die show. Typically we see two, but instead we see a sort of the Sky King. We have, one of Polymorph, which is really interesting, one of Valkyrie Enforcer, which is an actual Rise target, unlike Polymorph, two Caleb's Choice. So pretty interesting. I think the sort of the Sky King will do a fine imitation of Daisho. If he does still need to rise for that big weapon late game, losing the
Yeah.
Daisho won't be that big of a deal, but definitely not ideal.
Yeah, neither card is quite as powerful against the new Black Sky Harbinger, which is kind of a notable change that does make a bit of a difference. Although, of course, the Black Sky Harbinger is now vulnerable to Vanquish, so there's been a bit of a switch about on that.
Yeah, which there are 4 of in Trumpet's deck and 1 of in his hand.
Oh yeah, you always want those. They're super reliable. They stabilize you really well. Anything that gives you like a light amount of late game in your deck, it's usually something that you need about 4 of to sort of keep yourself well rounded against most threats.
Yeah, and so that second rise there, pretty powerful here. Going to be able to trade for both of these Bloodcasters, and Fairsaver can't really do much about it because of this face Aegis off of Cobalt Waystone.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good. Trumpets has got the face Aegis for the Starsteel die show if he wants it, or of course, he's going to go for the Auric Runehammer here, I think. He has not killed either Film Bloodcaster yet. He does not have a Harsh Roll, so it's going to be a little harder to get that 2-for-1 off of Auric Runehammer here.
I'm convinced that Cobalt Waystone is just the best Waystone. It's just Aegis for free. It just does so much, especially in this current metagame, with all the sabotages and things like that going around.
Oh yeah, in a tournament setting, I'd absolutely agree. There's a lot of strike to Granite Waystone as well. Like just getting a free blocker can save you a huge amount of life, but and it can also be kind of critical in the sort of like aggro archetypes. But I think all of them are pretty solid, and that one is definitely one of the strongest, especially in a setup where you see a lot of sort of face interaction, which is definitely one of the tournament oeuvres.
So getting out both these Bloodcasters means that you're not going to get the 2-for-1 with Auric Runehammer. And Black Sky Harbinger, not a bad draw here. Does pop Aegis for Varus Favor or on Icaria critically. Also drawing, oh yeah, of course, Found Bloodcaster pops Aegis as well. Mm-hmm. And then drawing that second Harbinger off Bloodcaster, that's a nice hit.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Herad really was super happy about that exchange. I'm sure he wanted to at least make sure to get rid of it before a card like the Starsteel Die Show came out. Die Show is out, combined with a Torch. It takes down Bloodcaster, and that's going to give Trumpets a pretty powerful weapon for the early game, but he's still got a couple of different things that can deal with the Die Show, namely Varus Favor into Black Sky.
Yeah. So I didn't see... Okay, yeah, so Trumpets did leave Polymorph on top. I'm not sure. I think Herad could have seen that, maybe been like trying to Bloodcaster and take the card that Trumpets left on top, but who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, I'd say that Trumpets is in a pretty bad position here. Herad's set up very cleanly to Death Strike into Cold Blood Icaria, which means that once Icaria comes down, that's the last Icaria. There will be 1 +5/+5 bonus for Trumpets, and then after that, it's just Champions and Black Sky Harbingers against a single Sword of the Sky King, which, pretty much guts the deck.
Yeah, hey, don't underestimate my my 9/9 Throne Warden, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, if he gets the right setup, that's really cool, but there's 2 Annihilates in Herad's hand. I don't think he's in any trouble from that.
Yeah. Yeah, and the critical thing here being that the in Cold Blood will just rip the other Icaria out of Trumpet's hand, and Trumpet will be left with nothing.
I think Trumpets might be aware of this fact. He's playing it super safe. I think he's waiting for his Island's Choice to come up so that he can keep In Cold Blood at bay. And that's a really savvy play from him. He must have played this matchup quite a lot to sort of understand how that works.
Yeah, In Cold Blood is just a crazy card for this metagame. I mean, we've seen Justice be so strong, and seeing a card that just absolutely ruins Justice decks is, particularly these, Icaria and sort of late game Tavrod decks, some of the bigger Argenport decks. It's just so powerful, and it really shifts the metagame because Feln was really losing a lot of ground, and a lot of these.
Yeah, Trumpets used his Rakano banner here instead of attacking with the Icaria and playing the banner. I feel like he should be playing the Icaria at this point. I'm not sure what he's waiting on at this particular hour.
Yeah, now that he has the Island Choice, maybe he's scared of Vera's favor in Cold Blood.
Maybe.
But you can't play around that for you're just giving them more time to draw in Cold Bloods, and they have more in Cold Bloods than you have Island Choices. So your odds don't get better.
Yeah, I think Trumpets may have missed a critical turn here by playing that Rakano banner without a unit to play it on. But now he's got double Vanquish on Champion, and from there... Oh, okay. I guess he's just attacking in, getting the Aegis up. That's actually a pretty good move, because he either trades with the Champion, or he gets just Death Struck out and gets some removal out of the deal. I'd say that's pretty solid.
Yeah, so we're going to see most likely... So just... can Face Aegis block in Cold Blood, by the way? Is that
Face Aegis... You know, I'm not 100% certain. I'm pretty sure that it can. It
get
won't
Rhino back
stop
in here.
the
We have
though.
questions we need answered.
Yeah, it sounds like it can.
Okay, so I'm getting word from resident Invitational Judge Rick-Henner that Face Aegis does block the secondary effect of In Cold Blood. So that is another big thing here that's actually very relevant. And this 10-10 Icaria right off the top is also pretty relevant, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, that's 10 damage to face, and it's also a double Vanquish or a single Vanquish. Oh, he's taking out the Frog. That's even better. That Frog could have been a problem over time with the Champion of Cunning, and we know that Herad's next move is to Black Sky Harbinger into Death Strike, so Trumpet's still playing it super safe, making sure that Icaria is nice and safe. But unfortunately, it is still lethal with the 9-5.
Not safe enough, clearly. Yeah, so that was actually a pretty close game. I think had Trumpets... if Trumpets didn't wait a turn on Icaria, that would have been probably a different game. But
yep. Yeah, he missed his critical turn. I thought it was very safe, very clever play all the way up until then. Really solid play from Trumpets, and taking a line that you would not expect and was, in fact, the correct one up until the point where it wasn't.
You know, like most lines are.
Yeah, so very solid game.
How do you feel going into the sideboard for both of these matchups?
Well, Herad's probably going to be rolling in Rain of Frogs. Giving more opportunities for him to just gut the Icaria blue deck is probably way too valuable to pass up. Trumpets is going to be, I think, following the same line. He's got 2 Rain of Frogs in his deck, and I'm guessing he's pretty happy to try and get rid of those in Cold Bloods in hand. Although it is a little harder for the Icaria blue deck to touch a Face Aegis and actually set things up. Other things that Trumpets can run include Unseal for the in Cold Bloods. He's got Bring Down for the Black Sky Harbingers and for the Champion of Cunnings. He can roll the Permafrosts. He's not very unhappy with them. They're very good, like, easy removal cards that deal with most of the threats, although they are a little bit difficult against Champion of Cunning. But they're still a good Aegis popper. That kind of thing can happen. I don't think he brings in the Rock Slides, even though they're kind of fun for popping Aegises. Polymorph is the most likely other target that he can roll.
Yeah, my favorite cards for sure are Bring Down, Unseal, Rain of Frogs, and potentially Valkyrie Enforcer. Just the most answers to Feln's win conditions. And yeah, the most answers to Feln's win conditions. And also Valkyrie Enforcer can, eventually win games if you've, Rain of Frogs, they're Harbingers, and they just don't have any answers to it anymore.
Yeah,
on Herad, it's also just... If you get into that situation, and then they have to use a removal on it, then that saves your Icaria or whatever.
Yep, it's a pretty good deal. On Herad's end, he can roll in the Durakas and the Thunderstrikes if he chooses to, make more big threats that the Armory deck has to deal with, although he's looking pretty good overall. I think he doesn't particularly need those Stewards of the Past, so there's probably going to be a little bit of space to play around with, but I think the main thing is he just has to get those Rain of Frogs in there and make sure that he has the necessary tools to deal with his opponent's stuff. If he runs the Unseals, he can play some counter play. Like, there's only ever going to be Islands choices and maybe Unseals in the other decks, so that could be pretty solid for him.
Yeah, I don't mind taking out some amount of Annihilates, So and probably the permafrosts, and potentially even hailstorm, and
Oh,
that
definitely the permafrost. Yeah.
and Steward of the Past, like you mentioned, and that gives him a lot of room to bring in, extra Death Strike just for like uh, answer anything, Thunder Strike, which is just a solid 2-for-1, can block die shows and such. And then if he gets to that point, then he can just start bringing Durakas, which probably won't actually do anything other than maybe pop an Aegis. But just a 7/7 is very difficult for Armory decks to deal with, and if it eats the Vanquish and then your champion gets to live, that's good enough, I think.
Yep, Trumpets is rolling a Caleb's Choice in here. I actually didn't see that card in the side or the main, but it must be in there somewhere. Yeah, it's actually a 2 of in his main board. Nice. So that's pretty solid for getting rid of the same sort of mechanics in Cold Blood that he has to deal with. I think that herad here is looking at just a sort of basic setup. He's got Felon Bloodcaster into an eventual Black Sky Harbinger. He's got 6 power at least, so he's good to go.
Yeah, neither player having a particularly exciting start here. Having the critical Cobalt Waystone from Herod is pretty nice, especially when players potentially, or both players have Cobalt Waystones, but Herod gets to save his, whereas Trumpets is going to be, okay, never mind. There's a Crested Fury, but Cobalt Waystone is going to be huge in this matchup because both players are going to be trading cards like Rain of Frogs and Sabotage and things like that, and blocking in Cold Blood. So whoever can keep up their Aegis and defend it is going to be, I think, ahead in this matchup, unless we just see Champion, Harbinger, and Bloodcaster come down, and Trumpets not find answers. But I think with the Vanquish and the Rise, he'll be okay.
Yeah, we have the first Felon Bloodcaster of the game down. Trumpets can choose to polymorph it if he wants to. He's got Rise to the challenge, so he's pretty capable of just grabbing an Auric Runehammer and trying to go to town. And that might be the best route for him here, just because he's got, a decent pile of stuff. But he's actually trying to set up to keep the Cobalt Waystone available at all times.
Yeah, like I just, like we just mentioned, Cobalt Waystone is just so critical in this matchup. It doesn't cost you a card, and it costs the opponent a card because of how many effects there are here that target the opponent. I think Polymorph is gonna sit around for quite some time because there's just there's only so many cards that matter in Herad's deck, and it's really important that Trumpets hits those. He can take 2 damage from this Bloodcaster for quite some time and feel okay.
Yep, herad does have a Varus Favor here to pop that first Aegis without really taking any major difficulties, but he's electing to at least direct his own Cobalt Waystone here, and I think he's going to wait it out, see if Trumpets plays down a few more Cobalt Waystones, and maybe not even bother if he doesn't find anything that hits face.
Yeah, and the other thing, it's a tough choice because it's not like Trumpets only has face Aegis. He also, is playing Icarius, Throne Wardens, other targets that you need to get through Aegis to deal with, and they're real threats. Particularly Icaria will end the game if you don't answer it.
Yeah, Trumpets has the Icaria right now. I don't know if he's going to be willing to play it. He was playing very cautiously with it last time around, and that's probably what he's going to be going for this time around because he's got to be fearing in Cold Blood. Herad does not have in Cold Blood this time around. All he's got is Varus into Death Strike, but I don't think there's any particular way for Trumpets to know that, so we're not likely to see his Icaria out immediately.
Yeah, I think since Trumpets already has Island's Choice and Caleb's Choice in their hand, they're going to feel pretty comfortable just waiting out till 9 power, holding up that Caleb's Choice, and then playing Icaria because that's just much safer. But taking damage from this Champion of Cunning in the meantime is a big deal.
Yeah, we have Torch into Island's Choice if Trumpets wants it. Looks like he's actually staying put. I'm kind of surprised by that. The Champion of Cunning is a threat that needs to be dealt with eventually, and Herad's actually got the Felon Bloodcaster pull now, which is a way to draw some cards if he wants to do that.
I'm very surprised to not see Torch into Vanquish because I for the reasons we talked about, I value Island's Choice a bit more, but maybe I'm not valuing. Maybe I'm overvaluing Island's Choice.
Yeah, Trumpets might want to be playing a little bit faster here with the Icaria and setting up just a little bit more efficient stuff. He's got the ability to do some decent work here. He's got the Harsh Rule. He has Icaria herself, which he is going to play this time around. and
So that's
get that
interesting
7 in.
choice. Okay, so I think what happened with Trump is more than they wanted to leave up counter magic for, or what? Excuse me, a negate for a removal spell. I think they just didn't want to run their Ikaria into a champion.
Yeah, fair enough. Like there was a certain time when that was perfectly appropriate for him, but now it's looking not so much. So Rise of the Challenge here does get a Auric Runehammer most likely. He could go for another Ikaria.
I don't think he needs Auric Runehammer when he has Polymorph, Harsh Rule, and Vanquish in hand.
Yeah, it's quite possible. Like I was thinking that getting rid of the film Bloodcaster, he would still be able to kill a Black Sky or a champion there and just get a 2-for-1. But Ikaria is certainly a lovely card when you've got the Influence, so there's not any reason not to play it.
Yeah, so fully activated Champion Cunning, pretty big deal here. I mean, sure, it turns everything into a Vanquish target, but that's not really a downside.
Yeah, Trumpets here is perfectly fine against it, though. He's got Vanquish into Harsh Rule, so he's ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, so Vanquish into Harsh Rule, 2 for 3, and 3 very important cards for Herad. But Herad bringing in those Durakas, like we talked about, just gives him more like a critical mass of threats in their deck. It's just not very likely, or not as likely, for them to draw cards that are not relevant. So as the game goes on, they might still just grind it out, and there's only so many answers Trumpets can have. This Ikaria is still just, looking to trade at this point, which is not where she wants to be.
Yeah, certainly the extra buff is going to be nice for Trumpets, but he probably would much prefer it if he weren't just doing that. And the Auric Runehammer means, wow, yeah, he's actually quite there. That kind of extra stat line is actually really, really solid here. He's got the face Aegis, so he's not really threatened by anything. Black Sky Harbinger will pop the Aegis so that he can get Lightning Struck, so that it's only going to get 2 to 3 cards out of the Herad's deck.
Just a classic 2 to 3 card hammer. No big deal.
Yep. Yeah. So, and there's the Vanquish. So now with the Auric Runehammer, he can deal 9 if he chooses to. That's a pretty big deal either way, I'd say. I think he's comfy not playing the Vanquish here if he doesn't want to, but I feel like attacking with the Runehammer and the Ikaria is really, really strong.
Yeah, I like just Vanquish, Ikaria. Good luck, Herad. See if you can survive another turn against this onslaught.
Yep. So there's 9 to face. Don't see any response. Ikaria comes out. That's another 7. Rod's probably going to be willing to throw a Lightning Strike at that. And then if he gets like in Cold Blood and gets to play something else. Oh, actually, that's probably...
Yeah, exactly enough power.
Yeah, there's still going to be a Polymorph in that mix. So
he doesn't know that. Don't tell him.
Grand Slam.
He thinks he's still in the game.
Yeah, well, it doesn't really matter because with the Auric Runehammer on the Champion of Cunning, that clears the path for Ikaria, so I don't think Herad has any illusions about what's happening next.
Yep. So that's going to be... that's 1-1, right?
Yeah, it's 1-1, so
okay,
we will see one more round.
Yeah, this matchup has a lot of play to it, and seeing both players just fighting over face Aegis is pretty interesting.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of work to make sure that they conserve exactly the right answers for exactly the right paths. We saw there that there was a really good setup with the Island's Choice to make sure that he had Vanquish Harsh Rule available later. We had some just really, like, they were being very conservative and doing a lot of interesting, just little decisions that sort of predicting the future of what's going to get played next.
Yeah, there's a lot of plays where, like, us looking in the booth, like, well, why would you do that? It's because there's so many cards to play around, and there's so much to do with your power that you can leave up there that it's just a really interesting matchup.
Yeah, Herad,
Island Choice and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Herad looking at not a lot here. He's got the Arena Frogs. He's got 3 power. He's kind of looking for more power sources at this point. Trumpets, similarly blank hand, but he's got a little bit more draw to help out.
Yeah, so I was really interested to see the torches stay in on Trumpet side because there aren't really any targets for Trumpets. Herad not playing anything with less than 5 health.
Yeah, I think he's just looking for ways to quickly deal with the Champion of Cunning. So, and a little bit of extra damage push doesn't ever hurt. Torch is a very useful, efficient card for all sorts of different scenarios.
Yeah, but I think with with permafrost, bring down, polymorph, rain of frogs, Valkyrie Enforcer, you just have so many answers available to you that I'm surprised that it ended up in. But Trumpets probably knows better than I do, which is why I'm not in the invitation.
Yeah, we're seeing a strategize there, and we got a little bit of a setup for Trumpets. Herad, it may actually end up having some power difficulties this time around, which could be very critical for this fight.
Yeah, and losing Waystone early here could be relevant.
Yeah, no face Aegis. Trumpets is looking at a potential Rain of Frogs to the face here. He does have a Seek power, which he's going to use to grab green, but that leaves him without the Caleb's Choice open, which means that Rain of Frogs hits here and probably hits Ikaria.
Both players struggling a little bit on power, but that's gonna be good for Herad. This Rain of Frogs is, like you said, just super powerful.
Yeah,
Without Ikaria, Trumpet's ways to win the game are really limited.
there's not a lot here. He's basically just got Auric Runehammer. I think that not holding Caleb's Choice was very, very bad for him. This might have been the deciding turn of the match. We see he's got some access to a couple of units. He's got Auric Runehammer, which he can play around with a little bit. There's no Rise to Challenge in his current hand, though, so he's really hurting right now.
But Herad is still stuck on power, so potentially Trumpets can curve out, draw some Throne Wardens, play some weapons, and still win the game. It's not over by any means, but with this 5th power, that's one turn closer to this Harbinger and Daraka. And once those guys come out, I don't think Trumpets really has a way back into this game.
Yeah, Trumpets. Herad's not playing Champion of Cunning if it doesn't have an Aegis. And if Herad can find power 6, that Black Sky Harbinger does just take the Auric Runehammer out, which puts him in a very, very tough position.
Yeah, so Trumpets is in, like you said, a tough position. Being the harsh rule deck that needs to have board advantage is just very, very difficult. Now that you don't have Ikaria, you're committed to playing out Throne Wardens and things like that to end the game, and that just makes your harsh rules so much worse.
Yeah, I don't like this Wisdom of the Elders here. He did it on his turn when he still got Caleb's Choice up to knock down any sort of spell that Herad might be laying, like, of course, the Wisdom of the Elders. Herad's going to play out his Champion of Cunning with an Aegis on it, feeling pretty confident that that's going to be able to get through. Trumpets has found his Starsteel Dice Show, but he's kind of wanting to get that, I think, with a Rise of the Challenge, so I'm not sure if he's too happy about that particular result.
Yeah, not ideal. I mean, problem being that you with Daraka in in the mix, 6 power is not quite good enough even so maybe sort of the Sky King is going to be the card that Trumpets is looking for anyway. But
Yeah, he's looking pretty okay here. He got Torch into Bring Down, which is exactly what he needed. The 5 damage here turns into a little bit less as Black Sky Harbinger comes down, but then at that point, he can seize control, provided he can Harsh Rule or do something to kill that Black Sky.
Yeah, Harbinger just destroys Trumpets here. I mean, I suppose it trades with either this Harsh Rule or this Island's Choice now, but man, losing, I mean, the Frog isn't great, but losing the Frog and the Runehammer just puts Trumpets so far behind in a matchup where they just don't have win conditions to draw to.
Yep, Daraka Queen's Guards do answer those weapons pretty well, so there's definitely a good game plan here. Island's Choice knocking out the Black Sky means that Herad's not sitting on any amount of extra health, and now Trumpets can actually play out the Starsteel Die Show and feel pretty comfy. That's 8 damage a turn. He's got 1 Harsh Rule to continue on the offensive, so he's got some answers to Daraka. I'm sure he'd like more answers to Daraka, especially with Herad at that critical 9 health, but I think he's looking okay here.
Yeah, it's that sort of the Sky King draw was critical because that was the one card that I think really lets him stay in the game. And then also the fact that Herad has Daraka is very good, like we said, but playing 1 Daraka a turn, just being having all this removal in hand and only playing 1 card per turn is something Trumpets can deal with. It's the card advantage has not really come into play yet because players have not exhausted their hands yet. But this Harbinger is gonna, I was going to say if Trumpets found an answer to it, but it looks like just this sort of Sky King is going to come out. But if Trumpets can draw Throne Wardens back to back, then I think this game is going to go in Herad's favor.
Yeah, I haven't seen one in his deck yet, so I'm a little curious as to what's going to happen here. We see a Rise to the Challenge, so Trumpets can pick up a little bit more if he needs to.
If there's a Throne Warden in his deck, he can grab it and play it, but it looks like there isn't.
Herad goes for the Rain of Frogs here. He can take out the In-Cold Bloods if he feels like it, but I don't know. I'm not sure if he's actually got the Throne Wardens at this point. He might be looking for just like the Bloodcasters and forcing Herad to just run a handful of removal. And if that's the case, then Auric Runehammer might be able to get through.
I'm pretty sure when you Rain of Frogs, when your win condition is a 10-4 sword and you're giving your opponent 1/1 blockers for it, there's something is not going right for you.
Well, we see the Rise of the Challenge. Trumpets isn't in trouble yet. He's still got the ability to get Auric Runehammer out here. If the Frogs come out, then that's a big deal. But he's looking at a couple more Auric Runehammers to the face. Channel the Tempest is a really good answer for Herad, but I don't know if he wants to play it this turn for sure.
Yeah, so I like that Trumpets, A, hit the Bloodcaster, and B, didn't hit a card that there was multiple of, because you don't really want, like, when you're desperately trying to get this last weapon hit in, you really don't want Herad to be playing units out.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Trumpets to be playing units out.
Trumpets, yeah, Herad reads the Caleb's Choice in Trumpet's hand, and we see instead an Auric Runehammer here, so that's just like a little bit of extra damage, and now there's lethal on the table, but with Avara's Choice, that's not going to happen unless he Caleb's Choices it, which I'm sure he will.
Caleb's Choice hitting Vera's favor to win very powerful spells, hitting very
little
powerful
sibling
spells.
Rivalry there, yeah.
Yep.
All right,
wow,
so
that was very close. So the way Trump has played it, basically, even though Herad drew more cards and got a lot of card advantage out of Black Sky Harbors and things like that, once Trumpets lost Ikaria, all of the removal that was, for Ikaria in Herad's deck just became dead cards, and so Rain of Frogs didn't really end up. It ended up being negative card advantage.
Yeah, that was a really solid series of games. I think Trumpets just did an amazing job taking away choices from Herad, making sure that a lot of films, like more powerful tools, weren't super available to him. And yeah, like despite what looked like a pretty rough matchup for him, managed to successfully pull out a win. So very, very good stuff.
Yeah, good play from both players. That was exciting. I think we're going to be looking for a backup match. But we will get word from. Okay, so we have no backup.
The last match of the round.
But I would like to tell you guys about a little thing called the Eternal Tournament Series, which you're watching right now. So this is the Invitational for those of you unaware. But we also have weekly tournaments almost every Saturday. I don't think we have one next weekend. I think after Invitationals is usually a break weekend. But once we come back, there will be free weeklies every Saturday up until the next Invitational. We have Invitationals every 2 months, roughly. You can qualify for Invitationals by placing well in these free weekly tournaments that anyone can enter. If you win one, you are automatically in the Invitational. And if you don't, it's still a lot of fun. And we invite everybody to come out and play or at least watch on Saturdays. Our invitationals lead up to an annual championship, which we have a $3,000 prize pool for, which is super exciting. So we also have a really cool system this season or this year, which is the rookie system, which if you have not played in at least 3 events prior to your first season of the ETS, then we will pick you'll be counted as a rookie. And at the end of a season, going into Invitational, the top 4 rookies in points will get into the Invitational, regardless of their points versus all the other players. So that's really cool. So come on out, join us on Saturdays for the ETS. And thanks everybody for being here watching this ETS. We'll be right back for more action in round 3.
See you then, folks.